Hello, my name is Terry Ziemniak from North Wonders. I'd like to thank TechWorks, Gaston County, for sponsoring me. They brought me in to speak to everyone about how to safely work from home, guidance for businesses and home users. Times are changing, and because of the coronavirus, COVID19, many of us are now being asked to work from home, and many questions are aroused on how we're going to do that safely, how we can do that securely. Because we're always thinking about cybercrime, or should be. Cybercrime is a multi-billion-dollar industry affecting industries of all sizes. With this dramatic shift of work from home that many of us were forced into very quickly, the question is, how do we protect our businesses and how do we protect ourselves personally? Cybercrime is generally an opportunistic crime, a crime of opportunity, and there's most certainly opportunities available to these criminals. So what I'd like to do is talk through some of those issues and concerns and things you need to be aware of to help protect your businesses and yourself. So, really, what are we worried about? Well, the big shift for remote access is that we are now taking people who are fundamentally protected by our infrastructure protections and we're taking them outside of our network. So what are we losing? Well, we're losing our network protections. When you're at the office, you are automatically protected from certain things. Every link that you click on, in many cases, is being scanned looking for bad websites. And your network will prevent you to getting to those bad websites. You're now on an untrusted LAN. What does that mean? It means that the bad guys are software. The bad software is on the same network as you. That could be Starbucks, it could be your home network, it could be your kid's laptop that has some odd game on it from Russia, which is actually a Trojan piece of software. Lastly, you're disconnected from your security team. So let's now talk about pockets of risk. Cybersecurity is a very broad concept, and we can't really address everything all at once. So to get organized, we're going to go through some buckets of concerns and deal with them at the same time. For the visual, I intentionally added a woman worker or a worker, and I also added someone to represent IT security. The reason being is all of these concepts really need to be considered from a user point of view as well as IT security's point of view. Neither one of those two parties alone can properly secure your remote worker. Both groups have to be thinking about these concepts. So user behavior, authorized data flow. Where's the data allowed to go? Can I put it on a thumb drive? Can I send it to my personal email? Can I use Dropbox? There needs to be rules in place on where data can go and where it can't go. Now that people are off the corporate network, they're most likely going to have access to a lot of technology that they didn't have within the organization. People need to have clear guidance on what they can and can't do with their data. If users have clear understanding of where data can and can't go, you really address that risk and you can manage that pretty quickly. Unapproved technology. So we talked about thumb drives. What about Dropbox? Again, users are going to have access to a lot of technologies. They're going to be rushing to get their job done and things may not work correctly. They may attempt to use technology not approved by the organization. You need clear guidance on what you can and can't do. We don't want them opening up Pandora's box by starting new services, new connections, sending data and using services that you weren't expecting. The last component is social engineering. And how does that come into play? Now that your people are detached and physically removed from the rest of their people and their processes in the department, you run the risk of people not following the process correctly, which can then make them attacked via social engineering. A great example would be I had a HR representative who received an email from a fake CFO, the actual CFO of the company. Someone made an email account with his or her name and sent it to HR saying, please change the information associated with my payroll. The bad guys were trying to get the CFO's check into their own bank account. Luckily, the HR person was able to stand up, walk down the hallway, and talk to the actual CFO and say, hey, did you make this request? CFO clearly said, no, that wasn't me. But they were able to unravel that attack because the HR person was able to get up, walk down, and talk to the CFO. That's not going to be a possibility when everyone's working remotely. So make sure people are aware of social engineering attacks and make sure they follow the processes that are defined. The second pocket of risk is remote network. Now that you're no longer on the corporate network, there's a lot of risks introduced you wouldn't normally have to deal with. First being the home network itself. So you may be at Starbucks You may be at your home network on the same network as your refrigerator, as your new electronic doorbell, same network as your spouse's laptop. How protected is that network? How well do you trust that your spouse's laptop doesn't have a virus on it? I know most people, if asked, would say, yes, I have within the past few years heard someone saying, I've got a virus. I got a virus on my computer. Those computers are residing on your home network now, so if your spouse's laptop has a virus, that makes you susceptible to that same virus. Next pocket of risk is physical. Physical is kind of the forgotten component of security, but really the issue here is, what are we going to do about paper records and the media itself? So paper records, people are going to be at home, oftentimes need to print. They need to write things down. And at the office, there'll be rules and policies in place saying we have a shredder policy, or we have some kind of mechanism to safely destroy that paper. That doesn't exist at home. So guidance needs to be given to users. What are you going to do with these paper devices? The second concern in the physical space is device or media being stolen. I myself have had my dry cleaner hand me my thumb drive, which was sitting in the pocket of one of my shirts. I lose thumb drives. It happens to everybody. Your users need to be educated and warned, A, not to put data on there it's not authorized, but if it is an authorized thumb drive, how do you protect it? How do you keep track of it? Next pocket of risk is device and media. So there's several technical components. In this case, most of these points are for your IT security group. Encryption, firewall, and updates, kind of the three basic tenets of securing computers. Obviously, we got to make sure those things are in place for devices being used at home. However, a new wrinkle now, the fact that everyone's at home, is personal devices. If you're at home, are you authorized to use your personal computer to do work? If you are authorized, is your personal device properly secured? Your company should give you guidance on how to secure a device and what the expectations are. Accounts and passwords, the next bucket. Passwords, I think everyone knows conceptually what a password is. A password's kind of a pain in the rear, but it's a big string of characters and how you authenticate yourself. Multi-factor authentication then is the ability to have two factors. One would be two factors to prove who you are. First factor most likely being a password, but then followed up with a call to your phone, or perhaps followed up with a ding on your cell phone within an application asking you to authenticate yourself. On the account side, here's another critical component. Are you allowed to use non-work accounts for work? All of us have work email accounts, and all of us have personal email accounts. Are you allowed to use your personal email for work business? Probably not. Are you allowed to use your Dropbox account to move files out to a client? Probably not. You got to ask those questions, but here's a key point here. Use work accounts for work and use personal accounts for personal stuff. Keep the two separate. All right, and lastly, secure access. Now that people are at work or trying to work from home, how are they going to get from their home network into the corporate network, which would be accessing the network? Your IT folks need to be on the ball, which they probably are, but a reminder, we need encryption in place, we need VPNs in place, we need proper authentication in place. And in addition to accessing the network, the second component is accessing applications. There's many cloud applications out there these days. Many of us use hosting services or cloud technologies that don't reside on our corporate network. So in addition to make sure I can safely get to the network safely, we have to make sure I can safely get to our Microsoft 365 safely, or get to our Salesforce safely, or get to any of our cloud technologies. So both of those have to be considered. And the last point in this bucket is unauthorized remote access. You as an end user on your own should not be setting up your own method to access your work computer. Setting up Go to My PC is a really bad idea. Using a remote desktop on your own to access your computer is a bad idea. Talk to your IT staff. They most likely have a solution in place. Use an authorized bit of technology if you need to remotely get back into your network. Don't create those solutions on your own. All right, so that's kind of an overview of the risks that we're worried about and things to keep your eyes on. So now let's break it down to a few specific points and real guidance on what you should be looking at. So from a business perspective, what are the top questions? We need to make sure only trusted devices can remotely access our network. Trusted is put in quotes intentionally. This does not mean that it's necessarily secure. It means that it meets our security standards. So if a vendor says their box is secure and they want to get on the network, you got to say, no, I don't trust it. You say it's secure, but I don't believe you. So make sure only devices that you control or you can ensure the security of, those being the trusted one, only those should be allowed onto your network. Rush deployments. Many of us are rushing now to put solutions in place. It could be remote access, it could be sending computers home, sending printers home, sending network technology home. We're rushing to get these things in place. Take a second and consider, were there any rush deployments which bypassed your security reviews? Everything you send out is just another place for the bad guys to attack. Take the time, document what you did, and go back and make sure it's all properly cleaned up. Have the devices all been hardened, and are they remotely manageable? So as a business leader, an IT leader, you have to ask the question, if a laptop goes home with one of our users, do we know it's secure? Is it encrypted? Is it logged? Are patches being applied on a regular basis? And can I remotely manage it? Acceptable use guidance. We need to make sure the end users understand the rules of the road. Those should be documented and they should be discussed with the users. So get that done as soon as possible. If you don't have clear guidance in place, users are going to go about on their own way, trying to solve their problems. Most likely they're diligent workers trying to get their job done. But if they don't have clear direction how to solve the problem, they'll solve it on their own. And more often than not, that's going to be a security issue for you. Third party and non-employees. Most of us have partner relationships, whether they are downstream or upstream with us. All the things that we talked about apply to those third-party folks as well. We need to keep an eye on those. And the last point I'll make for the business group is this. Security usually considers three components: people, process, technology. We've spoken about the technology. We've spoken about the people. Don't forget about the process side of cybersecurity. The number one cybercrime per the FBI is business email compromise. And that's a very simple attack where you pretend to be someone else sending an email in and try to get the company to change banking routing information or try to get other information from them. That's not a technology attack, but if you have sound processes in place, processes that say, we only change bank routing information after having a physical signed form sent to us. Those processes are going to be tested when you're working remotely. Contract review is another process. How is that going to function when your lawyers are not at site anymore, or your business folks are no longer all in the same room? How does your contract review process look like? Account termination is another great example. A lot of breaches are associated with accounts which should have been shut down that haven't been. What are your processes to make those to shut those down in a timely fashion? Okay. Now questions for workers. So we're all at home, we're all quarantined, we're fighting with our dogs and our kids, we're trying to get work done. How do we do it securely? So these are the few questions for you to think about. Am I following established processes? Kind of reiterating what we talked about on the business side. There's processes in place that give clear guidance and put controls in place to protect us in certain situations. Contract reviews, new user accounts, change to access rights, how you change banking routing information. Wire fraud's a big issue. Processes are in place, they've been thought through, most likely they've been audited. So take a time out as a worker and say, am I following established processes? If that's not possible due to the fact that you're remote, stop, raise your hand and have that conversation. Hey, what are we going to do? Because we no longer can meet in a room and talk about contracts. Make sure we all agree on what those processes are. Am I managing paper documents safely? Whether you bring them home on your own, you print them new while you're at home, paper is a concern in the cyberspace. Identity theft, medical information, credit card information. Make sure you understand how to manage those, whether you need to bring them back in the office to be shredded, whether you can shred them at home. Consider that risk and how you're going to manage all those papers. Is my home network secure? Most likely on your home network, again, you probably have a refrigerator, you've got your kid's gaming laptop, some suspect things you probably don't want on the same network as your work computer. So this being a list of top questions, I'm going to add a tippy top question. Do you utilize a guest network at your home? So if you were to call your ISP, your internet service provider, they will set up for you over the phone a trusted network and a guest network. Your trusted network, use it for your home computers that you trust, your work devices, your cell phones will all be on a trusted network. The untrusted network is everything else. That's friends and family that come over. It's your refrigerator, it's your doorbell, it's your doggy video camera. Separate the two so the risks of all this untrusted stuff that's on the internet now doesn't impact the stuff that you trust and you really want to protect. All right, point 4, am I utilizing approved hardware and software? Again, you don't want to introduce new technology because your corporate folks, your legal folks, and your security folks have not reviewed the new technology. There's technology in place to help you get your work done. If you find you can't use it, or you find you need some other kind of solution, you've got to reach out to your IT folks. This collectively is called shadow IT. You don't want to introduce your own IT technology to the business because it introduces all sort of risks. So if it's not approved hardware, not approved software, take a second, pick up the phone, call the right folks and validate that. Number 5, am I aware of the policy? What is acceptable use? What am I allowed to do? What can I do? Take a second, your company should have one of those, read through it, make sure it all makes sense, ask the questions and make sure you're following the rules. And then lastly, and this kind of sums it all up, am I keeping my work stuff separate from my personal stuff? You have personal email accounts, you have work email accounts. You have a personal phone, you've got a work phone perhaps, or a phone number. Keep these things separate, it's going to get you out of a lot of trouble. And that's one of the key takeaways is keep the two things separate. So I've included in the presentation a few resources for you. Feel free to look through those. There's plenty of good ones online. I'll give you some direction on what you can and can't do, suggestions how to manage yourself securely online. And then myself, I represent North Wonders. We're a cybersecurity consulting company. We do strategic and planning services for companies of all sizes, helping them keep secure. Thank you for your time.